So he mentioned the Peace Corps. In 1991, I received a letter from the United States Peace Corps. And I opened it up, and it told me that I was going to Ecuador. And I was so excited. I said, yes, Ecuador. And then I said, where's Ecuador? I have no idea where I'm going. And I knew it was in Latin America, and I wanted to be in Latin America. I wanted to be in this hemisphere. I wanted to speak Spanish. And hence the name Ecuador. It's on the equator in South America. And I told all my friends, I'm going to do agriculture in Ecuador. And they said, you're going to Africa? I said, no, that's Equatorial Guinea. I'm going to Ecuador in Latin America. Oh, agriculture in Latin America. What are you growing? Cocaine? Marijuana? Like, isn't there a lot of crime? Isn't there a lot of drugs? Why would you ever want to go there? And the interesting thing is that a lot of those stereotypes that existed then actually exist today. And I want to share with you a little bit of data. This is from 2011, but workforce participation rate among Hispanics in the US is actually higher, not only among men, but among the total population. And I thought this next point was actually really interesting. More than 70% of Hispanics think that minorities should be self-reliant. That was the highest of any ethnic group studied. You want to talk about drugs? You're more likely to use marijuana, you're more likely to use cocaine if you happen to live in the United States or Canada. So, clearly, stereotypes can be deceiving. What I want to talk about today is cultural understanding. And I want to talk about it in the context of what I do, which is market research, but to be clear, it has implications for everybody. If you are a global traveler of any type, if you do business work overseas, if you have an interest in politics or international relations, in the workforce, it is increasingly diverse, and of course, the student body is increasingly diverse as well. It's a lot different at Procter Gamble now than when I worked there in the late 90s, and it's a lot different at the University of Cincinnati than when I went here in the late 80s. So how did it starts with a little bit about what I do. I'm a market researcher. I'm a listener, and I'm also an interpreter. My clients literally pay me to go around the world and talk to their customers and to find out their needs, their desires, their motivations, so that I can interpret all of that for people with very fancy degrees who hire me so that they can understand it, and then they can activate against it. They can create innovation, new products. They can create messaging and marketing. And let's face it, in a world of big data, a lot of times we forget it's about people and making a personal connection with people. But how do you even start when the client calls you and says, hey, all that stuff you've been doing in the US, can you do that in Vietnam? Like, where do you start? So over time, I've developed a bit of an ethos to doing international market research. But it starts with a little bit of self-reflection. I don't know if any of you saw this musical, Avenue Q, and my wife and I were huge fans of musical theater, so we see it, and we lived in New York for a while and spent a lot of time on Broadway. But there's a great song in this called Everyone's a Little Bit Racist. And what it doesn't say at the end of that is there's a comma, and it says sometimes. Now, I'm not going to debate the politics of the word racism, and I'm not going to call you a racist. But what I will tell you is that I had a bit of an awakening as someone who does market research internationally, that I'm a little bit racist sometimes. And that's okay. I don't mean it in a Jim Crow sort of way. I don't mean it in a hate crime sort of way. What I mean is that if I can't at least recognize stereotypes that I have, biases that I bring as a white kid who grew up in a middle-class household in Toledo, Ohio, to doing research with people in Vietnam, then I'm going to be in a lot of trouble, right? So the first part of my whole journey was just recognizing that all of us bring cultural baggage, maybe not baggage, maybe it's good things too, but we bring it, and it can impede our judgment and cloud how we think about other people. So over the years, and I've done research now in nearly 30 countries, I've been doing it for 20 years, I've developed a bit of an ethos for ways to better understand other cultures. The first one is recognize that there are universal truths to humanity. The second is to go native as much as you possibly can. And the third is to find ambassadors in these countries that can actually bridge the gap for you and help you get a lay of the land and better cultural understanding. Now, it's kind of cute, isn't he? You're not going to like how this ends up. My journey starts as a Peace Corps volunteer in Ecuador, and I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to the first point, which is recognizing the universal truths of humanity. When I arrived in my tiny Ecuadorian village high in the Andes Mountains, at 22 years old, I had some preconceived notions about my role, and I literally saw myself riding in on a white horse to save the people. And I learned a couple of things very quickly. Number one, I wasn't nearly as smart as I thought I was. And number two, the people who lived in this village were a lot smarter than I thought they were, right? Now, consider for a moment, well, not consider for a moment, I had to consider for a moment what I was doing wrong. I was asking the question, what's wrong here? I wasn't asking the question, why am I here? And so as I started to get into my community and actually talk to people, I decided to take a little bit of a different tact. Instead of, hey, let's do this program, or let's do this project, or let's try this or that, I said, you know what? I'm going to listen. But I'm going to listen a little differently. I'm going to listen with my eyes. I'm going to listen with my nose. I'm going to listen with my mouth. And I'm going to absorb the people of this community. So I call that listening with my eyes. And I learned, I was asking the wrong question. And in market research, that's huge, because the question informs the answer, right? Ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer. Garbage in, garbage out. The question wasn't what's wrong here. The question was, how was it that they even came to want or accept a Peace Corps volunteer in the first place? The second thing is that everything that I was seeing in my tiny Ecuadorian village, I had been seeing my entire life. Now, consider this for a moment. The average income of my Ecuadorian village was less than $200 a month US. There was no electricity, no potable water. There were no toilets, save a couple of latrines that were hardly used. The closest market was 8 miles away by dirt road that got washed out in the rainy season. A typical home had 2 rooms. One room was a bedroom that had 3 or 4 beds where a family of 5 to 12 would sleep, and they all shared a bed. And the other room was a kitchen. And the kitchen was typically dirt floor with a fire pit for cooking, and there were lots of chickens and guinea pig running around everywhere. So naturally, just like Cincinnati, Ohio, right? So, how are they similar? I want you to think about what's important in your life. And I mean truly important. I'm not talking about your iPhone. You are probably somebody who takes a great deal of pride in your work. You're somebody who wants to earn an honest wage for an honest day's work. You want to get promoted. You want to be recognized for doing good things. And if you're a student, the same thing applies to you as well, right? Your family, you care deeply about your family. If you have kids, you want them to succeed. You want them to be healthy. You want them to have ample food and shelter and protection and do well in life and actually to do better than you did. And then on a personal level, you probably take a lot of great pride in who you are. I'm proud to be a University of Cincinnati graduate. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud to be Irish. And you're proud to be Asian American. You're proud to be African American. These are things that I've seen hold up in every single country I've been to. But why is it important? Because I was not able to see how we were different until I was able to see how we were the same. It's the first step in developing empathy is to recognize that that person that eats something different or looks a little different or acts a little different and it's strange to me actually has a lot of the same goals and values I do in life. That's what happens to guinea pig. I knew you wouldn't like the way that ended. The second thing I want to talk about a little bit is going native. And not all of you are going to be able to go native. I get that. You're not going to be able to spend 2 years in an Ecuadorian village. But there's a lot of different things that I employ right now in my work, and I do it consistently that helps me really get to understand the people. And one of the best ways to do it is to eat the local food and to eat it with local people. Now, I was in China just about 6 months ago with a business colleague, and he took all of his meals in the hotel and at McDonald's. And our purpose for being there was to understand the Chinese people. Like, how can you even begin to do that when you put yourself in a sterile cocoon? I'm going to take that picture off because I can tell some people are kind of grossed out by it. And no, it doesn't taste like chicken. I didn't eat it that often. So a lot of you remember Peter Jennings, the ABC nightly news host. He spent a lot of time in every city he went to riding in cabs. And the first thing he'd do is talk to cab drivers. Now, I do that too. And I'm a bit of an introvert, believe it or not. So for me to muster up talking to somebody, especially when there's a language barrier, is really important. But some of the things I want you to think about when you travel is how do you spend your time, particularly if your goal is to really understand people, or if you just want a vacation that's a little bit different. What are the things that you do? Do you talk to the cab drivers? Do you have meals in local places? Do you get lost in the subway system? Do you go to markets where people don't exist? It's not the same as going native, but certainly it's a great way to understand the culture a little bit better. Now, the third thing, come on, I had to stick there. Anybody know who that is? It's Borat. Yes, and the name of this movie is so long, I can't even tell you the title of it. Something like Make Something for the Benefit of America and Kazakhstan, I forget. But Borat was a movie that came out on or about 2007, and if anybody saw it, this is just a crass character. He's rude, he's disrespectful, he plays the rube, he's misogynistic, he's anti-Semite, which is interesting because Sacha Baron Cohen actually is a devout Jew who plays this character. And he is from Kazakhstan. Now, within a year of this film's release, I got a call from a client saying, I need you to go to Kazakhstan. So the first thing I did is I get online and I Google Kazakhstan and I'm trying to figure out what I can about this country. And every website I went to, including the US State Department, said no matter what you do, don't mention Borat. You'll be in trouble, trust me. They hate it, it's offensive, blah, blah, blah. But for those of you who know me, the moment you say don't do something, clearly that's a dare, that's a bet. So I knew I had to learn something about the Kazakh people because clearly to me this couldn't be it. So naturally I asked my friends and colleagues, any of you ever been to Kazakhstan? Probably not. No. Any of you know anybody from Kazakhstan? And you know what the reply I got was? Isn't that where Borat's from? So I knew I had to do something that's a little bit different. So what I sought to do was to find an ambassador. And I use that term very purposefully because there's a bit of diplomacy involved in that. When I'm doing research overseas and I'm going somewhere for the first time and I have no idea what to expect, wouldn't it be great to have a friendly face at the airport? Wouldn't it be great to have someone who can take you around? Wouldn't it be great to have somebody who can really show you the inside and out? Because I guarantee if you're a business traveler, here's what happens. You go to the airport, somebody picks you up in a really nice car, they take you to a really nice Western hotel, and then from there they take you to a really nice conference room, and you never talk to the people. But if your job is to talk to the people, well, that changes things. And if you want to be good at your job, you've got to be able to really understand people. So I called my business colleague and said, hey, can you hook me up with somebody? Just somebody show me around a little bit. And I said to this Kazakh woman, I have 3 things I want to do. Number 1, I want to eat food in a place where Westerners don't go that you really happen to like. The second thing I want to do is I want to go to a market, and I'm not talking about Prada. I want to go to a market where I can really see where the Kazakh people go, and again, where there's not a lot of Westerners, if any. And the third thing I want to do is I want you to take me to some place that you think is culturally relevant to you. Now, that was in about, like I say, 2007, 2008. I have employed that strategy now in every country I've been to since. And in fact, my clients are often surprised to learn. They're like, hey, let's go out to dinner tonight. I'm like, actually, I've got a friend who I'm going to go out to dinner with, and you're certainly welcome to join, but we're going to do something that's a little bit different. You're going to get a unique insight into the people of this country. So this story actually has a happy ending. In 2011, the foreign minister for Kazakhstan actually got up in front of Parliament and thanked Sacha Baron Cohen for this film. That's kind of odd, right? Like, why would you thank somebody who portrays your people in a very bad way? Well, there's this thing called the law of unintended consequences. And over time, people started saying, Kazakhstan's kind of interesting. And their tourism started to boom. So that's the happy ending for that. But the happy ending for me is that I was able to develop a very strong relationship with somebody who was able to literally teach me about the people, teach me about the culture. It made my research much more successful than if I had gone the sterile route. So my challenge to you is the next time you're traveling, the next time you have an opportunity to really explore a culture, throw the tour book away, talk to the cab driver, have a local meal with a local person, get to learn a little bit more about the culture on your quest to become more cosmopolitan. Gracias, arigatou gozaimashita.